Hello everybody and welcome back to another HR Studios tutorial. Now today we're going to be setting up the dropping system for our inventory system. Now what we got going on right now is the ability to be able to, say for instance, equip different types of armor, different types of clothing, all that good stuff, and so we also have the ability, like I said, to be able to drop items. So if I just click right here, it drops the item within a random radius around the player, and I can pick that up. If our inventory is full and I try to drop an item and pick it up, so like this, it won't allow me to be able to pick it up, unless of course we have enough inventory space to be able to pick it up. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we want to do is let's hop over into our scripts folder. Now there are some things that we are going to have to update and some things that we're going to have to create as well. So yeah, we're just going to get started and hopefully everything works great. You know what I'm saying? Alright, so what we want to do first is we're going to actually go over to our interaction character. So if you recall, I created a GMTester, which is basically a testing script for me, which allows me to be able to move around a character, right? Now this tester script is not meant to be the main character. It's just meant for me to be able to experiment with and be able to actually see my character while I'm testing. So we did a couple things here that you will need to, of course, update. These are just for the interaction part. If you want to do your interaction in some other way, that's okay. But this is just how I did mine. So we created this public layer mask called interactable layer, right? This allows us to be able to set up a layer specifically for interactable objects. This way we can make sure that we're only going to be interacting with interactables. The next thing that we did is we have an if statement here called input.getKeyDown key code E. So whenever we press the E key, we're going to fire out a raycast. So we create this variable called raycast hit. Then we ask the question, if physics.raycast, we're going to be getting the position, which is our camera.position. We're going to be getting the direction, our camera.forward. We're going to be putting in an out variable called hit, which of course is our raycast hit. And then we're going to have our distance of 3. And then the layer mask, which we want to be able to interact with, which of course is our interactable layer. Next, we're going to get our interactable interface, and we're going to call that interaction, which is equal to a cast of our interactable at hit.collider.gameObject.getComponentInteractable. Then we're going to ask if this interaction is not equal to null, so we want to make sure that it is actually equal to something. If that's true, we're going to basically call this interaction.interact function, which, if you recall, we did create this whenever we were making the chess script. We created that interactable interface, so all you need to do is call that here. Then we want to ask the question if our interaction is a chess script. So whenever we open up our chest, we wanted to be able to make sure our character could not move, right? So this is just simply asking if it is a chess script. If that's true, then we're going to say is open is equal to true. Now this is just a workaround for now, but keep in mind that if you are creating your own custom script, that you don't need to necessarily follow this specifically. This is just a, I guess you could say, a guidance into the correct direction, okay? All right, so let's go over to our CursorTooltip script. Now, this is another script that we are going to be adjusting. There's just a slight thing that we changed inside this one as well. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be adding two different libraries. One is system.collections.generic, and the other one is unityengines.eventsystems. Now, there is a, what's it called? A resource on the Unity API, which allows us to be able to basically get if our pointer is over a UI object. And of course, I'm going to leave that in the description down below, or a link to that website, so that way you guys can copy this from over there as well. But all of this does is simply gets if we're over a UI element. So yeah, you guys can just put that in right there. I'm not really going to explain it too much. But yes, so that's all we're going to be doing there for that right there. And next thing that we need to do is we're going to ask a question underneath the void update function. So we want to first ask if our input.get button down and we're pressing the fire one or the left mouse button. Now, I am using the legacy version of Unity's input system. So if you're using a different version, that's okay. Just make sure that you're doing whatever button that you want to be able to drop the item, then that's what you're going to be putting right here. Then we're going to say if our slot.item is equal to null, we're going to return, which means we don't want it to do anything, right? If that's not true, then we're going to ask if is pointer over UI object is equal to false, right? If that's true, then we're going to say GameManager.instance.playerInventoryDisplay.inventoryHolder drop item, and we're going to put it in our slot. Now, you guys haven't written this one down yet, so that's okay. It's going to have some red squiggly lines. It's going to happen. I'm sorry. But just make sure how you spell this is exactly the same as you do whenever we get over to our inventory holder script. Now, the reason why we're going to be going to our player inventory display is because we want to be able to drop the items around the player, which means that we could have any other inventory holder drop these items, but since the player is already going to be like near the chest whenever we drop items, or near the, I don't know, let's just say an NPC, right? It's going to be dropping near that object anyway, so might as well call it from the player and not even worry about it. You know what I'm saying? All right, so lastly, inside of this script, we added this public bool called add back to slot, which is going to have an out, which technically this is not really a new variable or new function. This is one that we had earlier, but it was a public void, right? And we changed this to a public bool, and we also added this out item data called return slot, right? Because there's a lot of things that we need to take care of here. So we asked this question. We're going to say if our previous inventory.getValue previous index is not equal to null. You know, that's the same as the last time. But what we're going to do here is we're going to ask a question. We're going to say if our GameManager.instance.playerInventoryHolder.addItem slot. Now, if you recall, addItem is equal to a Boolean function, which means that this is going to return as true or false. If it returns as true, then this is going to basically be added to that inventory, right? But if it returns as false, it's not going to add to that inventory. So if this returns as true, then we're going to set a return slot equal to a new item data, basically making it equal to 0 or null. Then we're going to clear this slot and return as true, saying that we did add it back to our slot, right? Otherwise, we're going to set a return slot equal to this slot value, and then we're going to clear this slot. We're going to set the return type as false. Now, outside of this if statement, basically, if it is equal to null, if we don't have a previous inventory set up, then we're going to set our previous inventory equal to the slot value. So set value, slot, and previous index. It just has to work this way. I'm sorry. But anyway, we're going to set our return slot equal to a new item data, which is basically setting it to null, clear the slot, makes it equal to null, you know, yada, yada, yada. Return is false, boom. All right, so yeah, like I said, that's all you have to do there inside of your cursor tooltip. So let's go over to our inventory holder. Now, the inventory holder, I believe we added, what was it, 1? Yeah, we only added 1 here. Okay, cool. So inside here, we added two functions, yeah. So inside here, we're going to add a public bool called pickup item. And this is going to need an item data called item data. And we're going to basically ask a question. We're going to say if add item is equal to false. So we're going to say add item, put in our item data, and then put this not sign here, or exclamation point. Then we're going to return false, which means that we can't add this item, so we can't pick up the item anymore, right? Then we're going to return true if this is not true. So if we can add the item, we're going to return true. Next, we're going to create a public void called drop item, And this, of course, requires an item data. We're going to call it data. And for this, we're going to create a game object called item drop. We're going to make it equal to the instantiate. We're going to create a resource folder, and we're going to get into that after we finish the scripts. So we're going to say resources.load. We're going to put in our pickup object as game object, just like so. And of course, we need to set set the item data for this. So we're going to say item data.getComponent. We're going to put in our pickup script. Now, you guys haven't written this down, so some more red squiggly lines is going to happen, but that's okay. But we're going to be getting this component called pickup, and then we're going to be setting the item data to this data value, right? So make sure that you do spell this exactly the way that we're going to be spelling it inside the other script as well. Very, very important. The next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting the location. So we're going to create a vector3 called spawnPose, which is equal to a transform.position plus a new vector3. We're going to get a random position, so we're going to say random.range. And mine is a -2 to 2 range around the player. And same thing on the X. And on the Y, we set this to higher so it can drop down a little bit. So 3 to 5. And then, of course, on the Z, it's a -2 to 2. And you can set this wherever you want it to be. I just want it to be able to spawn around the player at some form of distance. So then we're going to set the position. So item drop transform.position is equal to our spawn pose. And lastly, we need to clear the tooltip slot. So we're going to just say GameManager.instance CursorTooltip, clear the slot, boom, bada bing, done. All right, so now since we finished the inventory holder update, let's go over to the GameManager update. All right, so this had some minor changes because we had to make sure we could drop our items properly because we ran into some issues. So here we have the question, of course, underneath the game only, if our cursor tooltip slot.item is not equal to null, right? So whenever we switch back over into our game mode only mode, we wanted to create this item data called temp data. This is just a temporary variable that we'll be able to change and adjust however we want it to be. We're going to ask the question, if our cursor tooltip.add back to slot, put in, of course, our out data called temp data right here. If that's equal to false, so we put in this not value again. If that's true, we're going to set our player inventory display.inventory holder.drop item, and we're going to put in our temp data, which now allows us to be able to drop the item if we can't add it back to the slot. And I believe that's all we have to do inside of our game manager. So, all right, let's go over to our item script. Now, inside the, I believe it was the previous tutorial. No, it wasn't the previous tutorial. It was the equipment tutorial. We created of course, the mesh for equipping items. Now, that required a skinned mesh. So whenever we created the mesh, it was going to be assigned for skinned targets, which means that if we tried to spawn a skinned mesh into a normal mesh renderer, then it's not going to work out very well because then it's going to be all bugged out and looks crazy. So we're going to go over to our public class of item, and we're going to create a public mesh called static mesh. So whenever we create our pickup object, we're going to use this mesh to be able to create or make that item appear. Okay, so make sure that you just put a public mesh called static mesh. The next thing that we have, of course, is underneath our equipment. We changed this name, so go ahead and double click that public mesh, right click, and then what you're going to do is you're going to select the rename, and this will allow us to be able to rename it across all instances throughout our scripts. That way we don't have to worry about changing them individually, okay? But yes, this is just going to require another public mesh. Just call it skinned mesh model. This way we can make sure that the skin meshes are the ones that we can equip, and the ones that are not skin meshes we're going to use as our drop, okay? Okay, so let's go over to our pickup script. Now, to create this pickup script, what you want to do is go over into Unity, and you can put this script wherever you want to be able to put this script. And I believe, let me actually see if I can find where I put this. There we go. So I created a script called, or a folder called events. So if you right click, create a folder, call it events or whatever you want to do. Then you could just simply right click, create C# script, and then just put in your pickup script like so. Now from here, all we need to do is create a serialized field, and we're going to create this as a private item data called item data. You don't really need to set this as serialized. It's going to be set anyway, but I wanted to be able to see things whenever I was testing, so that's the reason why it's there. So we're going to create a private void start. We're going to destroy this game object after 120 seconds, which means that whenever we spawn this object into the world, we want it to naturally despawn after a certain amount of time. This way it's not cluttering up the environment and not slowing down our computer. We also created this, or went on with this interaction function from our iInteractable interface, which makes sure that you do add in that comma iInteractable. And this interactable interface we created previously as well. So make sure that if you didn't get that you go back through the inventory system. I should hope that you guys have gone through the inventory system if you're at this point. Anyway, so we're going to create an if statement here. We're going to go ahead and grab our GameManager, go for our instance, player inventory display, inventory holder, pick up the item, put in our item data, like so. And then we're going to say if that is equal to true, we're going to destroy this game object. If not, it's not going to do anything. We're not going to worry about it. We also have this public void, set item data. Remember how I said spelling is very important. However you spell the other one, spell it this way as well. We're going to require an item data called new data, and then we're just going to set the variables. So item data's item is equal to the new data item. Item data stack is equal to the new data stack. Then we're going to get the component mesh filter. We're going to grab the mesh. We're going to then make it equal to new data, get their item, and then of course set its static mesh, like so. And that's all you have to do. Pretty nifty, right? So let's head back over here into Unity. Now, there's a couple things we need to do here to be able to set things up. Now, the easiest way to be able to create our prefab for this is first off, right-click inside of your prefabs folder, create a folder, and call it resources. Now, you have to spell this folder exactly the way that I spell it, because whenever you're using resources.load, it requires you to be able to spell resources correctly. So make sure that it's spelled resources with an S at the end, capital R. Okay? So to create this pickup object, the easiest way to do this is simply right-click, create a 3D object, and then you can add any one of these basic objects. Now I'm going to add a cube for now. So I'm going to go over to our scene view, and I could just drag this cube up like so. So let's just put this at 0, 0, 0 real fast, just so I can get that snapped in. So here we have just a normal cube. It gives us the mesh filter, gives us the mesh renderer. Everything's great. So you can rename it pickup, and I'm going to just say pickup ref right here. But you can call it whatever you want. I call it pickup object. Now make sure that the spelling for this is spelled exactly how we're going to instantiate it. So if we go over to our script and we go over to where we instantiate the object, which should be under CursorTooltip, I believe. No, I think it's actually not underneath the CursorTooltip. We just went over this. Oh my God. All right, so yeah, actually it's inventory holder. Yeah, right here. So if you spell it here, you need to be able to spell it over there as the game object. So whatever this is spelled as, you need to create the name of the game object as the same as well. So if we come back over here, this thing right here, you're going to need to put it as the same thing there, but I'm just going to write ref for now because it's not actually my pickup object, okay? All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to create the layer, right? So select this layer mode right here, go over to add layer, and you're going to put in a new layer. Now mine is underneath user layer 6 called interactable, but it would be preferable if you have it underneath 6 or lower. So just write it in whatever layer you want it to be interactable, and so go ahead and reselect your object, change the layer to interactable like so, And then from there, we're going to add in a sphere collider. And for this one, we're going to set this as isTrigger, and we're going to raise the size up. So this is basically just the interaction range around the object, right? Next things next, we're going to add in our pickup script like so. And you don't even need to set any of this data because this is going to be set whenever we drop the item. So you could just simply click, drag, and then drop it down here to make that prefab. Now, like I said, just make sure that the name is correct. That way it will actually pick up the object that you want to be able to spawn. All right, I think that should be it. So I'm going to go ahead and save, press play again. That way you guys can visually see how everything works one more time, and yeah. All right, so I'm thinking for the next couple tutorials, we're going to start setting up a couple of interesting features, mainly getting all these models. Now, also, another reference, keep in mind that whenever you're creating these models, static models, you can export them without the armature, and they will be exported as static models. But if you export them with the armature, then they will be considered skin models. So that's something I found out whenever I was exporting these objects. But yes, so I can pull it here, drop it, just like so, pick it up, re-equip the item. I could take off his shoes, drop them. As you can see, we can pick them up again and all that good stuff. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, check out some of the videos. If you have any questions or comments, please drop those into the comment section below. I'll be happy to get to those as soon as possible. If there's any form of tutorial that you guys want me to be able to cover, or anything that you want me to add to this inventory, make sure that you ask or put those inside the comments as soon as possible, because this inventory tutorial is almost over. So just keep that in mind. So yeah. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.